Hey, all you wiretappers. Gary Jenkins, retired Kansas City Police Intelligence Unit detective. It's great to be back here in the studio. It's a cold day in Kansas City, Missouri, but we're going to talk to a warm state and with a man that lives in that warm state, Carlos Perez. Welcome, Carlos.
How you doing, Gary? Doing good?
Yeah, I'm doing good. A little cold, and I know it's much warmer down there. We talked about that. Now, Carlos was involved in the drug business, which is quite topical right now, especially today. Now, this won't come out today, but as of over the weekend, the Mexican government arrested the El Mencho, the head of that. I can't remember the name of that cartel. It was Western Mexico, the state of Jalisco cartel. And somehow he got killed on the way to Mexico City as they're transporting him. And his guys, the cartel members, are going crazy. Carlos, let's talk about that a little bit, about this new war on drugs. When I was in Ronald Reagan's war on drugs, it was different than it is now. Now we have this new war on drugs with blowing drug boats out of the water, and this guy dies on the way to the bigger jail. Let's talk about that a little bit, Carlos. How would you, as a former drug trafficker, how do you react to that?
The laws change, and the more that the smugglers change, the more that the system to catch them changes. Also, back when you're talking about Ronald Reagan's war on drugs, there was quite a few things that allowed the smugglers to succeed. One was most of it, and I'm talking Caribbean now.
Yeah.
Most of it was going through the Bahamas. The Bahamas had laws at that time where anything governmental was not allowed to land nor dock a boat in anywhere in the Bahamas without the permission of the Bahamian government, which by the time they got to wherever, if they reacted, if they were advised of some drugs coming in, it would take them a long time to react. I think they had two boats for all the islands that had to travel back and forth. They couldn't, the DEA, the Coast Guard, they couldn't catch you. And when you fly a plane in, you just land anywhere and say hello to the DEA as they're flying by because they can't land. And therefore, you score the load that you have. Nowadays, Jesus, God Almighty. Now you've got the Coast Guard out there. You've got the Coast Guard citation constantly flying, plus Navy. But you couldn't get it done. And back in those days, that's the way it was done. It was the Bahamas played a huge part. The prime minister of the Bahamas was so heavily, even though he never did any time or anything, he was heavily involved. He took payoffs to left and right. The situation is completely different. Now you got AWACS flying overhead that can hear you when you're in the bathroom. You anybody. Here's my opinion on that. I want to know who in the hell was in charge of sending those boats out of Venezuela that after the first one got blown up. Who was telling them to keep sending boats over? Now, if Maduro, this is my theory, if Maduro was smart, he would have stopped that. If he was really the one in charge, he would have gone, God, you got to make me look better. You can't keep doing it. That tells me he was not in charge of the shit. Okay, so there's someone behind that kept going, send them. We got to see if we can keep the score. I don't know how he kept doing that. To me, that was such a stupid move, especially when you see that you've got half of America's Navy sitting on your doorstep, and you keep trying to send drugs. What are you, nuts? Then the Pacific, they should have gone over to the Pacific, where there's less surveillance, and maybe run it up the Pacific coast by land. Okay, try to get it into Mexico by land, because back in the day, Mexico was not really involved at all in that. It was the Caribbean, and then when the Colombian cartel, which was Medellin cartel, when they stopped losing so many loads, they started to go to Mexico. And through Mexico, they just flew small planes, landed in the woods somewhere in Mexico, and then they moved it up. You weren't doing that in the Caribbean by that time. And talking about Reagan's war on drugs, I had this is a sideline. I had two little boats coming in from the Bahamas that had marijuana on. I still got to laugh at this freaking idiot. One of them, they were coming in from Bimini's only 47 miles away. You can almost do it on the fumes of a gas tank. This guy forgot to gas up. Coming over, he gets stopped by the Marine Patrol, right? As they're searching him, the other boat had gone through, but was wondering where his partner was. And he goes back to see where the guy is.
Yeah.
Now, how's that for? Anyway, they get them both. It was a total of about 1,200 pounds that had come from Jamaica at that time. And the vice president, who was Bush,
Yeah.
was at the Coast Guard dock when they were unloading the boats. And I was sitting there watching, going, damn, they look like my boats. And when I investigated, that was one little incident that had happened. But the difference between yesterday, or yesteryear, and now is chronologically things change. They Trump, everybody that was a president or that had something to do with stopping the trade with drugs, never really stuck their foot in deep to stop it. It makes me feel like, yeah, you're talking a lot, but you're not really doing much. Because if I was a cop, my God, I'd have had all kinds of medals from stopping these people because it's an easy thing. But no one really had the interest. Who was involved economically up the top? God, and only God knows. In the Bahamas, I knew who it was. It was the prime minister.
Yeah.
Knew his people real well. In the States, everything changes every couple of years. And you don't know what they're thinking, what their process of thought is to try to stop this. You know what it was? None. They didn't try. Okay, they did not try. What there used to be oh God, probably about 2 or 3 DC-3s a night landing in Bimini, 47 miles away. Okay, each one of them had 10,000 pounds on. The boats were running up the river, the Miami River. Once you get inside on a river, inside land, you pretty much already scored. That changed. Then it went to freighters, fast boats going out, picking up and coming in.
Yeah.
Then when the United States stopped that, when they declared we're going to be able to stop any boat anywhere in international waters, you couldn't do it back then. They did. When that ended, then you began with the airplanes. The airplanes would take it. This is still back when the U.S. or any governmental agency could not set foot in the Bahamian territory, Bahamian waters, without the prime minister's knowledge. The prime minister's involved.
Yeah.
You're not going to get it. It's not going to happen. So that changed, and it went to small airplanes. Fly it in anywhere you want. Excuse me, one in the Bahamas, and then get your boats, and from there on in, try to see what you're thinking. Your process of thought is going to be to get it from the Bahamas, some of the shorter points to the States, into Miami at that point. One of them for me was easy. And that was because I had information on the Miami Tower and where in the hell everything was at any point in time. So I would sit and wait for my messenger to get back to me to tell me where the smoker was, which was the big Coast Guard boat, and where the citation was. Once I knew that, I knew I could come across, and the only thing I was going to run into was fishermen. So things change, and then they allowed things change after that, and obviously they were allowed to go into the Bahamas and do whatever they wanted. But that was when Pinman was finally out. I don't know who the prime minister became after that, but it changed. And now it became, this is why I think that the cartels were stupid. They, instead of doing as much as you could without getting noticed, they started bringing in loads of 10 and 20,000 kilos. I was like, God, where the hell did they get all that? I know where they get it, but since I know how the situation goes, I want to know how they amass it and get it onto one boat or one container or whatever, and not have it noticed. That's just way too much to not notice at one point or another. People get edgy around shit like that. In
Yeah.
other words, I could take 2 people and put them in front of a container and separate them and tell one of them that's full of drugs, and then tell the other one, no, that's full of furniture, and then stand both of them there and see who gets nervous. The guy, it's human nature. It's human nature. If you know something bad is going on, to feel it and to react. Why they did that, I don't know. I was one of the ones, if not the only one, that was sent to Mexico to teach them how to put airstrips in the middle of the jungle, how to protect them, what to do with them, where to put potholes with certain rocks, get him out when the plane's coming, put him back in when he's done. So if anyone else tries to land, they're goners.
Yeah.
But how it got so deep, I'll never understand that. And I was pretty much in the beginning of smuggling as to notice chronologically how everything changed, because I stayed for quite a while.
Yeah. Now, Carlos, you've written a book about this. What's the name of that book?
The book is called Heisting the Beard, and
Heisting the Beard.
the beard with a D, meaning Fidel Castro. Uh,
Interesting.
he's just in Cubans when they go like this to their chin, or they mention him and they mention him as the beard. He was heavily involved in the decision making of Cuba running drugs.
Mm.
That book is about. Oh, I ran into a guy. This is how this happens, which is really fun. I ran into a guy who I used to call him by the name of Banco, and he came and told me that he knew where there was a big load of drugs, jewels that they had pilfered from the ocean, where they knew that shipwrecks had gone down because no one can dive around Cuba. And
Yeah.
Cuba is the country that held all the gold before it went to Spain. Everything stopped there and went on. So he told me he knew where there was a warehouse that was holding that plus a lot of coke. And I had ways to get in. I have a friend who's Bahamian, who was actually one of my partners, who's from Ragged Island in the Bahamas. Ragged Island is maybe 20 miles off the Cuban coast, down on the eastern end of Cuba. So it was easy for me to sneak in. Everyone thinks of Cuba as this military power, Russia's buddy. They didn't have shit. They couldn't put a plane in the air. They didn't have patrol boats. They had patrol boats, but I swear I could outswim them.
Mm.
It was ridiculous to see at what point they were, developed as far as a country. And it was like everything has gone downhill as today, and it keeps going down. So I would sneak in on a Zodiac, and I'd hit the coast, middle of the night. No one would see me. I speak perfect Spanish. I speak a Cuban dialect, so I wasn't going to get caught by because I looked like a black bean in a pot of white rice. It wasn't
Yeah.
going to be like that. Exactly. So we figured out where everything was, and we went in and took a little load
Mm.
and got away after after a lot of headaches.
Yeah.
But we were able to do that. And there's other instances where there's an airport right next to Havana called the Varadero Airport, and it's a military airport. And I know that they were holding a lot of cocaine that was going in there. And the reason I know that is because hearsay in the streets in Miami, you go drink a little Cuban coffee somewhere, you hear assholes talking garbage, and they would say that they were getting boats ready to go to Cuba to bring in whatever they had. So it's not really why they make it a mystery as to why they were involved. If you think logically, let's say you leave Colombia and you're doing business with Cuba. Wouldn't it be safe to just, oh, they're chasing me, let me land in Cuba, and I got no problem now because they don't want you here, but they want me here. That's logically speaking. So why that mystery among people that they weren't involved? It's, what are you, crazy? Not only that, recently you might have seen it. They've had Carlos Letter Riva, who-
Mm.
of the
Uh,
Medellin cartel.
Carlos, can you say that over again? It just zeroed out. Say that over again. About after you said Carlos leader
Le- Later
later.
Rivas.
Yeah. Now, whatever you said after that, say that over again.
Carlos Letter Rivas recently has done some interviews on the drug trade. He did a lot of time in the States over the Norman's Key transporting point where all the coke would go there. And then, like I told you before, they fly it into the Bahamas and then over into the States. He recently has been on saying how he was personally involved with Raul Castro. I have no doubt about that. I knew him personally. I flew a couple times into that island where it was transported out. So I know what he was talking about. The reason I also know that is everybody has this Pablo Escobar myth in their head. He was neither the boss and he was neither the money man. The money people were the Ochoas. The military, his might, his force did not come from him and his mouth that he could do this and that. It comes from Rodriguez Gacha, who had a 2,000-man private army, and he was one of the members of the cartel. And they never tell you who started it all, and it was Carlos Letter Rivas. He was the one that started the cartel. He's the one that wanted to be in the Colombian parliament and was looking for votes. No, Escobar is he was a latecomer into all that stuff. The only reason they put him out there that I can understand is because they just wanted a figurehead that they could knock the hell out of later on.
Yeah.
Okay, because when he started fighting against Los Pepes, which was that organization that got together to try to kill Pablo. Pablo reversed it on those guys. He got rid of almost all of them, but it wasn't him. It was Rodriguez Gacha. He's the one, and he was involved in the emerald business before he got into the coke business. He was the Mike. He was the guy. Let me tell you what. When Pablo was around, and I only saw that once. When Pablo was around Gacha, okay, this was down in La Guajira, in the high desert in Colombia. When he was around Gacha, you could tell that he was subordinate. He was scared. He was like, damn, if I mess up with this guy, he'll take my head off. So people really have the whole story wrong. Pablo, my, you know what? Pablo, my ass. There's a lot of people you had to have money to do those things.
Yeah.
And in those days, they were strong enough because of the Ochoas that they could gather big loads, 1,000, 2,000 keys and put it all together. But as time went on, chronologically, that shit changed. Okay. I can remember once getting a load, they labeled it. They labeled every one. One had one name, one had the other. So
Yeah.
what they were doing at that time was it got so tough on them because of Pablo's big mouth and because of his I'm going to take over and plus blowing up a plane and doing a few other attacking Parliament, all those things. You couldn't put those loads together after. There's to me, there's no cartels anymore. To me, they're government narco systems. You,
Interesting.
you, the Mexican government is definitely involved with the cartels, and as you saw, we didn't go. We went after a cartel in Venezuela, but the head of the cartel was the Venezuelan government. So what they are is narco states now. And you know how hard it is to attack or to deal with a narco state? Now you're dealing with a government entity that has a lot of
Yeah.
power.
Yeah.
It's a completely different ballgame. Venezuela themselves, including Cuba, had a diplomatic immunity flying into different countries with the drugs. And they could put a load of cocaine on and fly it into Spain, and they had no problem with it. And they were doing those kind of things. I would say recently, like within the last 10 or 15, maybe even since Maduro's been there, which is about 20 years, that they've been doing that. Really, the United States can get information on anything they want. They had this information but couldn't do anything about it. So that's chronologically everything changes. Back in the beginning, it was. Let me tell you, the first time I made a little money was hauling some marijuana with old Touch Brown from the Everglades, and I worked like a Hebrew slave for 4 days in the swamp hauling bales of marijuana and into the Everglades and then over into Miami, and it was a completely different game. And you know what? They didn't cheat me for one penny. They didn't cheat me for one penny. And how much came in? 40 tons
Wow.
on one of the boats. Yeah, it was 80,000 pounds on a freighter, and we worked like slaves. And they paid me like 2 weeks later. I had They paid me $2. I'll tell you that story in a minute. You asked me a while ago how I got started,
Yeah.
and should I answer that, or you got another question you want from
Yeah,
me
well,
before?
now go ahead. How'd you get started in this? You started out as a grunt, as we say in the military. You started out as a low-end worker, guy that transports bales. What did you do? Yeah, you
Yeah,
start saving your money up, and you knew where the connections were, and finally you bought your own load and just kept getting bigger and bigger?
in a sense, yeah, it wasn't drastic. As when I came in, here's the story. I'm in Texas. My mom calls me up and tells me I have an uncle who's in Texas. He wants to see me. So I get together with him, and he's driving a brand new Cadillac. And this is a guy who 2 and 2 to him is 22. And I know he's my uncle, but he's a dumb son of a bitch. So he's telling me that he's got you know what a roach coach is?
Yeah.
Yeah. Those
Yeah, oh, yeah,
the construction things with food. Tells me he has a roach coach in Miami, and that he bought a house. He's got a house. He's doing really good. And I looked at him. I said, "Bro, you're the one that crossed. You're the wetback. I came on a plane a long time ago." He's telling me stories. What's going on here? So anyway, he tells me, and I say to him, "Get me a job." I was working as a carpenter in Houston, straight out of college. I'm banging nails. I said, God damn, I'm banging nails. I got an education here. What's going on? So anyway, I load up in Houston. I end up in Coconut Grove working for one of the bosses. My job was $500 a week, and I had to go and sleep on his yacht. And about 7 p.m. And by 6 in the morning, when the workers started coming in, just go. That went on for about 4 or 5 months, and I finally said, let me make some real money, because I saw he was still moving and doing things and economically moving forward, and I was sleeping on a boat. So he finally gets me an interview with two of the bosses. And this is a building in Miami that was called the DuPont Plaza building. And so we go to the meeting, and I'm talking to the two guys. One of them, they called them El Coronel, and the other one, El Colorado. The Colonel and Red. They were the ones that were handling. And this was, by the way, this was marijuana coming from Colombia at that time. So we go in there, and he tells me, no problem, I'll pay you $2 a pound. Now understand that at that time, at that point in time, my mind is in Jersey and New York. And if you're moving 20 pounds from one place to the other, it's a lot. But you're not dealing with loads at that time. We're talking, what, 1977 in New York? And I looked at him, I said, you're fucking crazy. You think I'm going to risk my ass for $2 a pound? Even if it's 300 pounds, that's $600. Are you fucking nuts? My uncle grabbed me by the shirt, stood me up and said, excuse me, walked me outside and said, listen, there's 40 tons coming in. You want the job or not? I went back in. I apologized to the two guys. I said, no problem. I will go to work. From that point on, there wasn't, that's just was right about at the end of the big freighters. So now my uncle invites me to go to Bimini because he had a friend there and they were going to do some job. I don't know. When we go, I end up running into a younger guy, Bahamian, and I became partners with him. We call him Dreamer. And I said, look, if you can set things up over here and gather up whatever materials you can gather up, I'll come and get it and we'll be partners. At that time, a lot of freighters and a lot of boats were being chased by the Coast Guard. And what they would do is they would dump it overboard.
Oh, yeah.
Ergo, they call it the square grouper.
Yeah, I've heard that. I've heard that before.
Bales were floating everywhere. You could go out. So what he would do is he would go on a boat, find bales that were floating. He would call me up and he would tell me, hey, I salvaged a 300 horsepower engine. Come and get it. And I knew what the weight was. So I knew what kind of boat I had to take over. So I bought an 18-foot formula. I dug out the hole in the bottom. I made a secret hole, what Cubans call un clavo, which is you're hiding it underboard. He called me up one day, tells me he can get 300 pounds. I left at 8 in the morning, was back in Miami by 11:30, left at about 12:30, went back and picked up another load. So in that first job, we ended up making a couple $100,000. From there, we bought a bigger boat. Now he started patrolling all the area where the boats were coming in, because everything flows from the Gulf down in this area, flows north. The Gulf Stream goes north. So everything's going to float this way somehow. We did that for probably a year until one time we went out. I was over there. We were going fishing and we ran into a duffel bag. The duffel bag had 65 kilos in it that was just floating. At that time, it cost probably around $40,000 a kilo in Miami, let alone New York. We didn't bother to take it up north, sold it all in Miami. And I used to say to myself, where the hell does all this cash come from? Because they would pay. Well, we made a lot of money at that time. And then I had seen.
Carlos, let me interject here. No. You were making hundreds of thousands of dollars just by picking up cocaine and marijuana that had been thrown off other boats. So you didn't even have to go buy it, really. You guys were just picking it up at the square groupers and then putting it together and then bringing it to my. That's crazy. You
You
are
got
an
it.
entrepreneur. You're a guy that sees an opportunity and seizes it. Tell you what.
And that's exactly how it went, Gary. When we made that big chunk of money, we had seen how things were going because we knew that planes were coming in and landing, and they had whatever it is that they were hauling, either coke or marijuana. So
Yeah.
for that amount of money, we bought a plane, and I decided to become a pilot. I said, "Hell, we're going to cut this down. I'll fly. We'll save money that way, and now we can talk to the people down in Jamaica or Colombia and say, hey, we're coming together. We're taking the responsibility. We're not going to middle it. We're not going to find it. We're going to do the job." And it took off from there.
Hmm.
Took off real good from
Crazy.
there.
Crazy. Eventually, I see that you are going to build in, have a legitimate life, become a horse breeder and a ranch owner, and rub elbows with all the kind of the muckety mucks, if you will, down there in Florida. So tell us about that transition and how did your life change during that time?
I had a family. I had 4 kids by then. And I knew that I was in a business where I had the chances were threefold. I either score or I die or I go to jail. And I didn't like any of those odds at that time. I was like, you know what? I've made enough money. I got a small little ranch out here. I don't need to do anything. And I decided that was it. I don't need to. I don't need to be doing this anymore. I'm set. And I'm the kind of person. I'm set with what I mathematically calculate. I'm not like I need almost $20 million. Oh no, I calculated it to where I knew I could be comfortable. And talking about mucks and big famous guys, I had lunch with Sam Walton one time. I was at, yeah, it's
How did you do
yeah.
that? That's
I,
interesting.
I was at his daughter Nancy Walton Laurie was heavily into the horses, and by that time I was into horses also. So I used to show them all over the country, and we were in Illinois at a horse show, and the setup that his daughter used to put out there was unbelievable. It was like, whew, she really put out a spread. And he happened to be there one time, and it wasn't like I went and had lunch with him, but a few people sat around, ate a couple of grilled burgers, and that's my story of Sam Walton,
Really
the richest
interesting.
man in the world at that time. And look who he's having lunch with. How,
Really. I've
uh,
noticed going to horse races that a lot of the support staff are all Hispanic, I think, because Hispanic people know how to deal with horses, have
you,
an affinity for horses.
you're absolutely right. The barn work, even me, and who, as far as the horses went, I was a nobody. I just had my own little spread. Even my workers were Mexican. They just are good at it. They're very good at it.
Interesting.
They understand country life too.
Yeah. So what happened? You're going straight. You haven't really done any time. Surely, DEA, I know enough about them that they keep files and they may not do anything about you now, but they know who you
Oh,
are more
you
than
got that.
likely. They know a
Man,
lot
you
about
hit
you and they don't forget. So what happened here?
no. You can't beat the government. It's an entity, not an individual.
No,
One,
no.
one guy prosecutes you and he retires.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean your case is over. He hands it over to somebody else, and it goes on and on. I didn't get caught doing anything. I had too many ways to outmaneuver them, and not because I was smarter than anybody else. It's because I had contact. I had a contact, like I told you, at the Miami Tower, where I would call him and say, "Hey, I need to know where this and this and this." He would call me back and let me know exactly when I could cross. So it was a matter of, in my case, I didn't play Russian roulette. I tried to put things on more of the positive end of it on my side. But so they arrested me for money because they
Uh,
thought I had too much. First, the IRS came in and they started checking out. The next thing I know is I'm being visited by the FBI. But it was alphabet soup when they showed up there
yeah.
at the farm. I was like, what the hell are these guys doing here? Anyway, they grabbed me, took me in, and I'll give you a funny story. And you used to be a policeman.
Yes.
All right, they picked me up, and I say to the guy, the old James Cagney steak. I'll be home before you tonight. That kind
Yeah,
of,
yeah, I'll
you know,
beat you home. You'll be still writing your
yeah,
reports when I'm back home. I
you'll still be filling out the
know.
paperwork and I'll be sitting at home, you know,
Yeah.
and I'm sitting. So I played that act. And actually, I did get home pretty quick. I was able to call my lawyer. He actually called up the mayor of Fort Myers. His name was Wilbur Smith, and he was a lawyer also. And Wilbur is the one that got me. It happened to have been on a Friday, which meant if they didn't work something out, I was going to sit my ass in the jail until Monday
Still Monday.
when the
Yeah.
judge comes back. But Wilbur got me out of it. I'm walking down the hall with Wilbur to go see the judge real quick. And he says to me, he goes, "Do you do drugs? You have any drugs on you?" And I'm like, "Oh, jeez." I go, "No, I smoke weed, but I don't touch anything else. I never have." Uh, and he goes, "So okay, we're okay with that." And in my pocket, I had a joint in my pocket. I pull it out and I go, "Here." He goes, "Oh, Jesus Christ, put that back." Oh Wilbur shit when he saw that.
Oh, man.
But anyway, I was home. I was home that night. Now, here's another funny story. Along with this story, I had a maid at the house at the farm, and she was Brazilian, and she was not a resident or anything. That girl when they went to pick me up, and they took me into it was the U.S. Marshals. She took off running into the woods, and I'm talking deep Florida woods.
Yeah.
And when I got back home, about an hour later, she ended up showing up, and I said, "What are you doing? Why'd you take off like that?" "I was scared they were going to deport me." It's like, if you were scared, what do you think I was? Yeah. Uh, and when they showed up, that one time when they showed up, you could have sworn that they were picking up Pablo Escobar
Yeah.
because it was alphabet soup, long guns, long freaking guns, not just people holding their little pistol, long
SWAT
guns.
team.
Yeah. And I'm like, all this for me? Really? And you know what it is? It's not long before that happened. They had called me in to do a polygraph. The FBI did. I had no problem because they were trying to associate me with the head of the Medellin cartel in America, the guy that handled everything, including the money. Did you see Cocaine Cowboys Kings of Miami?
Yeah, I did.
Okay, the one guy, George Valdez, that was
Yeah.
pretty much testifying against the other guys that he said he helped. Like, how can you're snitching right in front of everybody, bro? And anyway, I had a farm next to his, and the next thing I know, because I guess they tried to associate me with him, I had nothing to do with him. Next thing I know, the FBI is calling me out. They do a polygraph. Even my lawyer said, "Don't do the polygraph. It's not mandatory." I said, "I got nothing to hide."
Yeah.
They told me they were going to ask me about horses. They ended up asking me everything except horses until I finally, yeah, I took those things off my fingers. I pulled them off and I said, "This is done." And I left. Not long after that is when they swatted in. I was like, "Jesus, God, who do they think they're picking up here?" I'm just in in uh in sense, I'm still even if they know everything, I'm still a grunt. I'm working for it. It's not like I'm Mr. Put It Together shit. You call me up, "Hey, we got a job. You want it? Yes or no?" But it was unbelievable. I went
Really?
to jail. I did some time in jail. When I got out, I never once again really, even though I got 100 phone calls about you want to go to work, you want to this and that, I never really thought about it again. My kids were growing up. The youngest one was 6 or 7 by then, and they had suffered because I was gone,
Yeah.
and I didn't like that. And that made me feel like shit. It got to the point where when I was working, I looked at everything economically. Hey, this is what I'll be able to have. Once you have what you want, economics is bullshit if that's what you're working for because you already have it.
Yeah.
And when I got out, my thoughts were completely different. My thoughts were the money is not going to solve any issues I may have. Physically, maybe. Mentally, no. Mentally, I've got to learn how to deal with a little bit of reality here and figure out who is affected by my actions. And the people that were affected by my actions were people that were close to me. And I didn't enjoy that. I didn't enjoy that at all. It made me double take. It made me go inside and do a lot of thinking. So from that point on, I really didn't know what to do. And so I have a friend who is big time producer in Hollywood, who we grew up together in Jersey, who told me, "Wow, you got a lot of stories. You should start writing." And I never thought about writing.
Yeah.
So I started putting down ideas. I wrote a book, wrote a bunch of political essays on what was going on in Cuba. See, I grew up in a revolutionary family. My father was in intelligence, and my uncle trained the troops that were going to go to the Bay of Pigs, among other incursions into Cuba. So I came over. I'm 6 years old. I'm a Peter Pan kid. I don't know if you know what that is.
Now, what is that? You've mentioned that before. What is that? Tell the guys.
Peter Pan is it's not a good translation because it has nothing to do with Peter Pan. In Spanish, it's Pedro Pan and had to do with a little kid getting some bread or whatever. But in 1960, the Catholic Church got together and decided to send the children out of Cuba so they wouldn't suffer the wraths of the revolution.
Mm.
In essence, 14,000 kids were put on planes and sent into the States. I was one of them.
Wow.
I ended up
What
in
about that?
Miami.
Huh.
Oh, yeah. I was one of them, and I was actually one of the lucky ones because I had family in Miami at that time, so I was able to stay with them. My parents were still back in Cuba applying to leave in what back then they called the freedom flights. So a lot of those kids, though, they were sent, some of them were sent to Alaska, Montana, Wyoming. Really, they were dispersed all over through families that were willing to help and keep them until their parents came. So I was one of them that grew up because of my father and my uncle. The conversation most of the time, if not all the time, was around Cuba and its freedom. So the revolution at that time is going really strong in New Jersey. There's a family in New Jersey by the name of the last name is Cook, and they owned a big factory called Cook Color and Chemical. They're very wealthy people, but evidently they lost a lot of land or investments in Cuba, so they were willing to help the revolution and the revolutionaries. They had a big farm in this small little town called Hope. And that little town, you had all the Cuban revolutionaries up there getting ready. I'm talking about going into the woods with every kind of equipment you could think of. And they were training to go to Cuba. Now, here I am, 6, 7 years old, and I'm running around the woods with these maniacs.
Hmm.
They would dress me in camouflage and tell me I was the next generation of Cuban revolutionaries. And I'm like, what the fuck is this guy talking? I didn't know. I was having a good time with all these guys. And it ended up being that the New York Times caught wind that there were these crazy Cubans in the woods in Jersey, and they had to move their operations down to Florida. But about what happened in Jersey, the mafia at that time, they were all involved with the Kennedy and prior to the assassination and everything that was going on. They thought that the Cubans did it. They thought that the mafia did. They didn't know who did it. But there was a get together one time. I was probably about 7 or 8 years old, and it was a dove shoot, and where they had 1,000 doves, and they would all line them up and let some of them go. Boom, and they would do a big dove fricassee. But that meeting, I just remember the names because I was being introduced, the son of, and this is Mr. But the names never left me. One of them was Santos Traficante, who was the head of the mafia in Tampa. The other one was Fat Tony Salerno, who was the head of the mafia in New York. There was my mom's cousin, who was an FBI uh, agent, and a bunch of other guys that looked exactly like him. They dressed exactly like him. Boy, I could pick you out of a barrel, boy. And a lot of these other, I grew up in the Jersey, New York area, so I know what tough guys act, especially the Italian guys. So there was a bunch of them, around, walking around like they could take take on the world. And this is part of my life. I'm a young person doing it. I really don't know what's going on, but I'm picking up on all this stuff. They moved to Florida. I'm away from all that stuff for a while, but my parents regularly go to Florida for a visit, for vacation. So every year I'm running into my uncle and the things that he's doing, what's going on. And so the life never mentally never leaves me.
Mhm.
I'm always hearing next year in Havana, we're going to get them, all this nonsense. So the years go on, and the situation, you wonder how the smuggling game got started. The smuggling games basically, and I saw a report on this not long ago, some lady reporting on it. You had a lot of real educated men that were involved in the revolution that wanted to get their country back. The U.S. government, Secret Service, FBI, CIA, whoever they may be, okay, cut off the funds when all the bullshit with Cuba was done. You're not allowed to leave from U.S. soil if we catch you with any arms headed down. And they caught a lot of these Cubans trying to go to Cuba on little boats with all kinds of armament. They didn't do shit to them. Okay, they just slapped them on the hand. Don't do that. But it got to the point where the government was not funding that part of the Cuban Revolution anymore. What do a bunch of college educated, university educated men do? They're going to go work at the Fountain Blue. My father worked at the Fountain Blue when he first got to Miami, and there was water fountains that said whites, blacks, and Cubans. Okay, he was still trying to drink a. It's like my mother used to tell me. I didn't know I was a white until I got to this country, and now all of a sudden we have
Yeah.
white Spanish, white this, white. It's ridiculous. So these men were not going to go to work at the little bakery with a little Cuban coffee and stuff. They have all these contacts all through Central and South America because of the revolution. So who becomes the primary smugglers? Yes, the Cuban revolutionaries. And that's how smuggling was started in the Caribbean. I'm involved with all these people because of my father and my uncle. My legacy is I can get right in. I don't have to prove anything to anybody. And that's how I got to my uncle and him giving me the job with the guy and all that nonsense. So it's like the Grateful Dead said, what a long, strange trip it's been.
Trip it's been. Yeah. So where are you at now with your life?
Right now, we're putting together hopefully a TV show
Mm.
on basically my life, but my life in a novel way, not in a very direct memoir way.
Yeah.
And I continue to write. I am married to a wonderful woman who actually led me down this path. I was sitting on my farm doing quite well. My wife at that time had passed away from pancreatic cancer. That's a death sentence.
Yeah. I've heard
I
that.
didn't have
Too
a
bad.
I didn't have a will, and everything was in her name because I wanted to protect the family.
Yeah.
So when she dies, everything's gone. I'm not knowing which way to turn here. I'm 50 some years old. I thought I was going to be relaxing and fishing every day, and it didn't work out that way. I was going downhill like a sled in a snowstorm, boy. I was going to hit eventually. I don't know what bottom would have been, but I knew that it wouldn't be good. And I ran into a wonderful woman who led me down the road of we got to write, we got to do this. And she is my manager, and we eventually got married. And sometimes things are tough, but they're a whole lot better than hitting that bottom.
Yeah, really. Better and you're out of jail. You're not in jail.
Not
So,
there anymore. No,
what a
sir. No,
long,
sir.
strange trip what a long, strange trip it's been for
Yeah.
Carlos J.C.
Yeah.
Perez.
Yeah. It gets, want to know how strange it gets to the point where the DEA comes to me
Yeah.
to get information. And I'm like, you guys got to be kidding me. I always knew that when you're in law enforcement, you depend on,
Yeah.
on, on
You go
information.
wherever you think the source is, that's for sure.
Yeah, exactly.
You think you get
Exactly.
something out of them.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah,
They ended
that's
up
quick.
being great, by the way, great guys, super nice guys. Okay. And if I said any
Yeah.
different, I'd be lying.
But it doesn't sound like you ever particularly worked for him. You didn't go back in undercover for him either.
No, no, I didn't do that. Luckily, when I was doing the stuff that I was doing, it wasn't a Guns and Roses type deal. I don't ever remember collecting any money or doing anything where I had to have a gun on. Wherever, here, I'll give you a little tidbit of something that just happened recently. I had to go into to a government reinstate my license or something like that. And the lady's going through it, She comes up with a ticket that I got now I'm talking in the year 2000 and probably 14. She comes up with a ticket that I got in 82. It was a
Oh,
ticket. Yeah, the ticket was for $52. Two different tickets, 26 each. Okay.
yeah.
You know what that ticket was for? I had come in from the Bahamas in the hull of the boat. I had 800 pounds. The Marine Patrol pulls me over and says, "Let me see what you got." They go through the whole thing. He finds two lobsters that I had in the live, $26 per lobster. I got the ticket. The guy never checked the boat, never did anything, and I got in with 800 pounds, which at that time was like a quarter million bucks. Oh,
That's a
oh my
good
God.
one.
Life is funny, man. Life is funny.
Life is funny, that's for sure. All right. Carlos Perez. Now, the name of the book, and guys, I will have a link in the show notes to it. Remind me of the name of the book, Carlos.
Pedro Pan.
Pedro
Yeah,
Pan, as in Peter Pan, Peter Pan, and
right.
Pan is bread in
Right.
Spanish. So this isn't
Right.
anything about the little magical character Peter Pan.
Not a thing. Not a thing. And it's a product of a revolution gone bad, which basically is me.
Yeah.
I'm an unfortunate product of that
Well,
revolution.
you're back around now. You're contributing to society. That's the only thing that's important in the end. Hey, I have a quick question. Did you ever hear of a book called The Corporation, written by a guy named T.J. English?
Oh hell yeah! Read it from
Okay. All
cover
right.
to
All right. All
cover.
right. All right.
As a matter of
He-
fact, I know the guy.
okay. What's
I,
his name? Batista? Was it Jorge? But something
no,
Batista?
a battle. Jose Battle.
Battle. Yeah. Jose Jorge Battle.
Jose
Yeah.
Battle. As a matter of fact, I know the guys that have that own the manuscript. Okay, TJ, what's his name? What's the last name? TJ
English
English.
did the book.
TJ English. The only thing he did was write the book off of the notes that they had gotten from a guy that I know. His name is Tony Gonzalez. Tony Gonzalez has another partner by the last name of Freitas. And what they did was they investigated battle over the years and years, and then somehow ran into English because he had written a couple of books on Cuba. And then T.J. English ended up writing that. And by the way, Battle took the New York Mafia and put it on its knees.
Yeah. Well,
Okay, because
I did a
the
story
gang,
on the book.
yeah, and that's true.
You-
He had to get permission. Actually, had to get permission from back in the '60s from Fat Tony Salerno, and they couldn't get an approval until Trafficante stepped in and said, "Work with him." That and what they were doing then, they were killing each other. They were blowing up their little bolita houses and all that. Oh, that was crazy.
He
But you
met,
know what? He was never any kind of a Cuban mafia boss. He liked to fight chickens and play the numbers. The Cubans don't really have a mafia per se. They're too splintered. And in the mafia, you got to go ask permission to do this and that. These
yeah.
crazy guys, they don't ask anybody permission for anything.
Interesting. That's an interesting world. That's a whole different world. That Cuban, you've got the revolution on one side, the Castro revolution, and then you've got the anti-revolution against Castro that's been going on all these years. And in the middle of it, you've got some of these people that were kicked out of Cuba that are can't get jobs and are they only want you to work as a waiter or something. And so you go into business, and the best business going with your connections is the drug business. And so it's just a really interesting melange, if you will, or mix of people and situations down in the southwest part or southeast part of the United States.
Oh yeah, you're right. It is a mirage of like, how does this work? There's no sense to it sometimes.
No, that's for sure. I guess I'm glad they weren't blowing boats out of the water. They might have got you back then, huh?
I'm telling you what, I wouldn't. They wouldn't have dared because I would have said, I said, why don't you do that?
Oh, you get somebody else to do it, huh?
Yeah, yeah, and probably what would have saved my ass anyway is that I have never ever been money hungry. My family in Cuba, my great grandfather was a sugar baron, and I've heard all the stories about all the money, but I've yet to see a penny. It's I don't work that way. I grew up with a bunch of humble people, and it damn sure wasn't about money. When I'm young, I'm not thinking like that. But now at my age, I go, wow, man, if I knew then what I know now.
Yeah, really. All right, Carlos. Thanks a lot for coming on the show. I really appreciate it.
No, no problem, Gary. Thanks for having me, man.